2025 has been a wild season thus far, producing some iconic moments such as Todd Kidd's back-to-back Ajax 200 wins, Diego Urquidy becoming the active Ajax Cup Series all-time wins leader in West Virginia, Shane Park scoring his first oval win in nearly 2,000 days at the Stoneyard, and Braden Bennett scoring his first Cup Series victory at Disney in just his 22nd start to snap Toyota's drought. If you want to cop any of those replica diecasts, head on over to Circle B Diecast / Plan B Sales and use coupon code ASCA to get free shipping on any orders $20 or more at checkout. Hello and welcome back to another edition of the ASCA Weekly Podcast. I am your host, Charles Fallon, back in here for another episode, and boy, once again, another hectic weekend of short track ASCA action. And what more can you say about Belltown, man? As Nick Douglas would say, this track just never disappoints, and there's so many different storylines to cover, starting with a milestone victory for a former champion. We got to talk about a big controversial decision that race control made regarding an incident early in the race. The championship battle taking its first major swing of the season. The same could be said for the Craftsman Championship battle. We got to talk about a young star having some struggle these past couple weeks. We got to also talk about a big ASCA bust and what's next for his future, as well as previewing the final road course race of the season at Michigan. And let me just tell you right now, there is some rain in the forecast for next weekend. So this weekend, I should say, to keep an eye on that. It's going to be pretty wild, I think, out in Brooklyn at the Michigan road course. But before we get into anything, first, we got to shout out the sports premier partners. You already know, Rowdy Energy. Click that link in bio. The second link now in the ASCA's link tree underneath the Ajax All-Star Race fan vote. And go cop yourself Rowdy Energy. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do that. And then Circle B Diecast / Plan B Sales. You want to cop a replica diecast for the one that Cameron Atwood just used to score his 10th career Ajax Cup Series victory in last Saturday's AutoZone 200 at Belltown. Hey, go on over to Circle B Diecast / Plan B Sales and use coupon code ASCA for free shipping on any orders $20 or more at checkout. So once again, shout out to Rowdy Energy, shout out Circle B Diecast / Plan B Sales, and yeah, let's get into it. So we'll begin by discussing Cameron Atwood. And then we had this whole long segment last week talking about, is Cameron Atwood and Greg Healy, are their championship windows over? Are they finished? Are they done as perennial title contenders, elite level drivers of the sport? I bring their names up. I mention that they're done, and then they go out in the race and they're 1-2 battling for the win in the AutoZone 200. And Atwood ends up getting the job done. And with this maneuver, he slides all the way back up to 5th in the standings. So that just kind of shows you how wacky, I think, pretty much everything from 4th on back to about, I don't even know, from 4th on back to about, I would say 20th, 21st is really up for grabs this year. The field, specifically the midfield especially, is so competitive. And it's not even like midfield. Like, these are top teams. Ronnie Woods Motorsports, you got Michael White Racing, you got TJ Barrymore Racing, Arkady Bros Racing. All these drivers are battling amongst each other. And it just goes to show how competitive the ASCA is these days. And really the incredible product that the sport has been putting on, specifically at the start of this year. And we're going to talk about the top 3 in points as well, because obviously major championship implications thanks to the bizarre start of the race that we had. Well, we'll talk about Cameron Atwood first. 10th career victory for this man, and he becomes the 13th driver in the sport's history to capture double-digit wins. And this is huge. I think this is really just kind of a cherry on top for Atwood, and really, I think, putting him in that Hall of Famer category. And I know you're like Hall of Famer, what this dude has one championship in 10 years and he's only 29 years old and he's only really gotten it going these past 3 years. Yes, I believe firmly that anyone that eclipses double digit wins for now, I should say, is a Hall of Famer. And I think that eventually this is a team that's going to be watered down as more and more and more drivers reach that milestone. Like, do I think Bryn Renner is a Hall of Famer? Debatable. I think if he wins a championship, he certainly is. But um, could Chris Barrymore be a Hall of Famer if he reaches 10 wins? No, unless he gets a Windows 300. Then we can discuss that. But I think Cameron Atwood will go down as a Hall of Famer. And I the thing is for Atwood is for him, we're not even close to the end of his career right now. He's only 29 years of age, coming off of such an inconsistent season. It's really hard to really take anything away from what he did last year because he had the 2 wins. He led 291 laps. He finished fifth in points, but he also had 6 DNFs. Imagine where he would have been in points if he didn't total his car 6 times. And 2 of those were an engine failure at Belltown and a battery issue at Colgate that both forced him to retire. He could have been a title contender and really defended his championship going back to back last year. Speed was not the issue for Atwood, and the laps led bear that out. And once again, this year, speed is not an issue for Atwood. He has led 271 laps the last 3 weeks. That's more than double any other driver. And it took him a while to get going. His win on Saturday was, believe it or not, his first top 5 finish of the season. And that's the thing that makes it crazy about what Atwood has done is we talked about this last week. This is an A driver on a B team elevating his guys to competing with the best of the best. And we talked about how amazing he is at managing his equipment. That's what won him this race right here. Because he was really kind of meh that whole entire first stint. And that's after the opening lap yellow, they went back green for that little 20 lap stint. He was running around fifth, sixth. I think it was outside the top 5 at that point. Kind of meh. And then, of course, you have the Lester Bowden incident, which we're going to talk about in a second. So then you have that caution in the split strategy. And you see guys like Healy, Bowden, and Bennett, they all boxed. Atwood said, no, I know what my pit crew has done the past 3 weeks. I'm staying out. I'm not going to trust them. I can handle this. And that's exactly what he did. He knew when he needed to push. He knew when he needed to hold back. So he held back for that, I would say probably the first 15, 20, 30 laps. And then he finally begun to push. And he lost a couple spots in the initial restart. Got him back pretty easily, got the lead away from Colin Ward, and the rest is history. Once Atwood is in the lead, and then especially once he got an equal tires to everyone else, he knew it was over. I think the only thing that made it interesting was at the end when it was decision time. Are you going to box or not box for a 5-lap shootout? And Atwood, unequivocally, Bob Brady, his crew chief, he's like, hey, Cameron, you want to pit here? He's like, hell no. That's paraphrasing. He used some language that we cannot replay on air. He's like, hell no, I don't want to pit. That's a guaranteed L. We cannot do that. I can handle this on track. And obviously, as a championship winning driver, a Windows 300 winner, he proved exactly why he could. Running with tires with 80 plus laps on them, gets a fantastic restart while Healy spun his tires on the outside. And that's underrated how great of a restart he got on that final time. Leading the field to green is so easy, especially on that bottom lane to spin your tires, that Atwood was flawless all day long. No mistakes made. And more importantly, no mistakes from the pit crew, because Atwood has not been the one that's been making any mistakes this season that I can think of. and suspend the pit crew these past 3 weeks that have cost him. And I think the problem for Atwood is now he was making obviously $5 million a season from 2022 to 2024. He signs that basically prove it type deal with CJ Barrymore Racing. They get him for cheap. But once he went on that incredible run in 2023, they had to pay the man. They had to pay him and extend him long term and give him big money. Now they're lucky that they were able to get that deal done before the Brennan sweepstakes got out of control. So they're able to lock him in at $12 million a season through the 2027 campaign, because I think by the time 2027 rolls around, Atwood is going to be worth probably, we're talking 18 to $20 million. So they got him for cheap, honestly. And as the next couple of years begin to wind on, I think that we're going to see more and more drivers continue to get paid more and more and more money. And and which is why Atwood, I don't think, wanted a long-term extension with CJ Barrymore Racing. That's why he only signed a 3-year extension. Get that $12 million and then, kind of evaluate where he's at in 2027, the end of 2027, heading into 2028, when he'll be 32 years of age, and kind of just go from there. But that's years down the line. We're just talking about his 10th career win at Belltown. And the crazy part about it is we've now seen 3 straight drivers score their 10th career milestone victory at Belltown. We saw Todd Kidd do it in the AutoZone 200 last year. We saw Greg Healy do it dominating fashion in the Ajax season finale. And now we've seen Cameron Atwood do it in this edition of the AutoZone 200. And then one other thing to note, another weekend sweep for Atwood. The last 2 times he's won Craftsman races, he swept the weekend. So keep that in mind for the other Craftsman events he happens to run throughout 2025. But yeah, it's a huge win for Atwood. And now being 5th in points, is he out of the championship? Of course not. He's right back in the mix, especially with, again, the incident that we saw in the opening lap. This championship is now back up for grabs. I still think it's between 2-3 guys. We'll see how this weekend plays out. I think it's going to be a huge one in kind of determining the way that this all shakes out. But Atwood is still right in the thick of things. And if he can survive Michigan, and by survive, I mean put together at least a top 12 run, I think he's got a pretty good shot of eating into that points cushion that reigning champion Diego Urquidy has atop the standings now in the Windows 300, and then kicking off the second half of the season. Although Utah is such an unknown race, we don't know what's going to happen there. That one's just going to be really interesting to see what happens. But overall, huge victory for Atwood. I think this does give him Hall of Famer status. And he's earned it. He certainly earned it with the incredible run he's been on lately. 7 wins in the past 3 seasons. And again, we're only 6 races into 2025. So he could certainly score 2, 3, 4, who knows, maybe 5 wins this year. I don't think it's going to be 5, but he can definitely get another one, especially considering he's won 3 out of the last 5 short track races. I can definitely see him winning San Diego for a 3rd straight year, or maybe sweeping the season at Belltown. Who knows? But big win for Atwood, certainly. And transitioning to another moment from Saturday's race, let's talk about that early race incident between Doug Bowden and Norm Lester. And when I saw that, I had a lot of questions. And I have even more questions after the ASCA decided to not take further action against Doug Bowden for this incident. So in case you missed the accident, Lester and Bowden battling for the lead. It's lap 34 of 200 in the race, right? So we're not even a quarter of the way through. Bowden is all over Lester's bumper. They cross the stripe, heading down to turn 1. Bowden all over Lester's bumper. And he just doesn't lay off one. He just shoves him straight up the track and into the outside wall. Hard hit for Lester. And just a completely uncalled for maneuver, just an appalling maneuver from Bowden. Really uncalled for, especially that early in the race. It's uncalled for at any point in the race, but so early on. And I think that Bowden really needs to, I think he needs to have a chat with his father. And Tico needs to sit him down and say, son, you are tearing up way too much equipment, man. This is getting ridiculous. He's had some, I wouldn't even say it's bad luck for how he's ran since West Virginia. He dominated the Craftsman race in West Virginia, really didn't do much in the Cup race, which is expected. The Tico Bowden Motorsports on these bigger tracks, high-speed aero tracks, that's where they obviously struggle the most. They just don't have the equipment nor the funds to compete up with the Ronnie Woods and the Orchidi Bros Racing and the Michael White Racing. They don't have the funds to compete with that. I understand that. But we head to tracks that Bowden can make a difference at and tracks that he has run well at in the past. You got the Stone Yard. He DNFs there. He blows a tire. And how many tires has Bowden blown in his career on tire-sensitive, tire management tracks from being way too aggressive early in these runs? I feel like we see that at least once every 3 weeks with him. He's 28 years old. He's had how many years in Cup to learn tire management, and he still hasn't gotten the job done. We head to Disney. He's in the Craftsman race that week. Lap 1. Aiden Romo and Caleb Moore, they both take him 3 wide on the initial start because Bowden just gets an awful start from outside pole. So he gets taken 3 wide. As a Cup driver, you should know, hey, I got to back out of this. This is not going to work. I'm the one with the experience against these young kids. I'm going to back out, and I'm going to get these guys back a little bit later in the run. But no, Bowden keeps his foot in it on the outside. Unsurprisingly, gets put in the wall because there's not room for 3 wide at Disney. And then he retaliates by turning more into the wall and basically ending his race, not even half a lap through. And, of course, there's a big accident behind that one as well. So again, another one of these moments where you're like, you got to use your head, man. You got to exercise some patience here. We head to the Cup race, and again, it's another one of these moments for Bowden, ruffling feathers that he really shouldn't. He gets into Shane Park early in the race, puts him in the wall. They're battling for 11th position. Really unnecessary because it's only 22 laps in the race. And Park, of course, title contender. It's just uncalled for. And I know that he and Bowden and Park have had some history, specifically the streets of Computerville, their most recent incident, which another incident that I think was Bowden's fault that cost him ultimately in the end. So Park retaliates. He dumps Bowden hard to the outside wall, takes out a couple other cars from the process. So that's 3 straight DNFs right there. We head to Belltown, the Craftsman race. He actually wasn't directly involved in an opening lap accident, but I don't think there's really much he could have done there. He did take Bennett 3 wide, but he needed to go somewhere because Bennett obviously was incredibly slow on that outside, and then Painter just stuck it up, bounced inside, and lost it underneath him. So I'm not going to really blame that on him, but I will 100% blame him for the way that he raced Marcus Edwards. Again, really early in the race, 29 laps in, and these two are going back and forth like it's the last lap. No kind of evidence of tire management at all between the two drivers. And I don't understand how Bowden still doesn't get it. And then, of course, we get to the incident with Lester. Like, this is just a guy who has all the raw pace in the world, Doug Bowden, all the raw pace in the world. And I think he's an uber talented driver, but he is not developed from that gritty mentality he had when he won the Craftsman Series title with Tico Bowden Motorsports way back in 2018. He got that big opportunity with Ronnie Woods Motorsports, and he blew it because he was driving like this. And They gave him 4 years to develop, 4 years to figure it out, 4 years to learn from a Jimmy Hood, a Bryn Renner, to Todd Kidd. Um, Hood and Kidd, I believe, are two of the best drivers the sport has ever seen. Bryn Renner is certainly up there, won 3 Crown Jewel races, 8 career wins, veteran driver. Could have definitely learned some stuff from him. He was their teammate that entire time, and he just didn't develop at all. And now we get to Tico Bowden Motorsports, and I think his aggressiveness has gotten worse. And I get it because he's scrapping against the big boys and inferior equipment, but at some point, someone, whether it's the ASCA race director Bob Halpert, whether it's his father Tico Bowden, whether it's, I don't know, a veteran driver on the grid, someone needs to instill some sort of patience, some sort of finesse in Doug Bowden's racecraft, because I really do think that he has so much more potential to win many more races in the future if he can just get some finesse in his racecraft, like Diego Urquidy. Except Bowden, of course, doesn't have the raw pace that Urquidy did to get away with winning races so recklessly and championships and all that, so recklessly over the years. He also doesn't have the equipment anymore either. Bowden needs to add that finesse in his game. And I think that's going to take the ASCA laying some sort of probation or even a suspension might be necessary down, because the fact that before last Saturday's AutoZone 200, Bowden had not finished a race since September 11th, and we're talking about a 28-year-old engaged, newly minted father. Like, it just shows that there's zero development that's taken place throughout his career thus far. So I think the ASA should have taken action. I think they made the wrong call there. And Taylor Motorsports and Norm Lester have every right to be upset about how that situation transpired, for sure. Moving on to the title fight. Boy, oh boy, we saw obviously a huge moment in that, another flashpoint potentially, when Shane Park bizarrely broke a transmission, taking the green flag. I don't think I've ever seen that in my time watching the ASCA. Shane Park breaking a transmission, coming to the green, and he doesn't go. And they all just stack up behind him. Ryan Dixon, Todd Kidd, Nick Urquidy, Carson Smith, they all pile in. There's just nowhere to go when a situation like that happens. And it's just such a bizarre deal. Such just, I don't even know, an oddity to say the least. Just awful luck for Todd Kidd. You certainly have to feel for him. He did not have a DNF prior to this weekend. The defending winner at Belltown of the AutoZone 200. He had a really good shot to potentially get another one, with all the chaos and calamity that transpired after that. But man, I don't know what to say to that. And Park as well, and again another title contender, third in points. So a huge blow to their championship hopes, but not as much as it probably should have been. And that's because Diego Urquidy, remember, Belltown is one of 2 tracks that he's never won at. Could be 3 if he doesn't win the inaugural running of Salt Lake. But Belltown is one of 2 tracks that he's never won at in the ASCA, which is so odd, because when you consider that that's his home track after all. Diego is from Belltown originally, born and raised there, and he's never won at that facility. He's won 4 championships there, never won a race. Just so bizarre to think about. Of all his 27 wins, none have come there, and I'm sure that has to be, other than his 5th championship, winning a race at Belltown has to be probably number 2 on his bucket list right now. But again, the struggles for Urquidy continue, back-to-back weeks, really off races, back-to-back 9th place finishes. And this is a guy that's won 4 championships. You really expected him to kind of pounce on an opportunity like this, and he only ended up finessing a 4-point lead out of all of it over Todd Kidd. So if you're Todd Kidd, you got to be breathing a massive sigh of relief that you're not in a bigger hole heading into Michigan, a track that he's won at twice. But of course, Diego has won the most recent road race, and he has won at Michigan before back in 2017. So I think it's going to be pretty even between these two. And I think obviously the guy to watch and the road course is going to be Shane Park. Big opportunity for him to bounce back if his transmission doesn't break again, of course. And I expect him to take full advantage of it and to really kind of vault himself back in the title fight. So going to be really interesting to see how this race weekend at the Amp Energy 200 transpires out. We talked about it right in the forecast, talked about it much later on in the show, and we preview the whole weekend. That could be huge and throw a giant monkey wrench into everything. So we're going to see how that plays out, but the championship fight certainly tightened up after this race weekend. We finally see a new points leader for the first time this season. The points lead changes hands, and the points lead also changed hands in the Craftsman Series for the third time this season, with Aiden Romo taking that from Tony Del Valle. And boy, what a rough past couple weeks it's been for Tony Del Valle. I saw his father, of course, having another aneurysm on Twitter, and it's been a nightmare past 2 weeks for him after the little break that they had. I mean, he hasn't even completed a full lap combined in the last two races. It's just like I don't even know what to say to that. Like, there's not really much he can do in situations like that. He can't even get going and begin to try to establish a rhythm at either of these tracks. And short tracks just seem to have it out for Tony Del Valle II, to say the least. But huge opportunity for Aiden Romo. He's taking the points lead here, but Romo is rather hit or miss on road courses. So we head to Michigan. Del Valle, of course, did win the most recent road race, so he still got a shot. How about Gunnar Thorson, though, as well? Back up to second in points. He finished not top five, but sixth at the Shoots Computerville earlier this season. We'll see how he does in his first trip to Michigan, but he's been just outstanding this season and shown certainly a lot more development than a lot of people expected, especially considering he's an 18-year-old rookie like Del Valle as well. So those two, Del Valle and Thorson, those are the future of the sport right there. And we haven't talked much about the defending champion either. Graham Darty just kind of chilling back there in the standings. Same thing for Sean Wooden. This Craftsman title fight that a couple weeks ago, it was Tony Del Valle and everyone else kind of lumped together. Now it's back to being wide open. You have back-to-back opening lap DNS for the points leader. And yeah, that'll do it for you. So title fight is wide open in the Craftsman Series. And these next few weeks, I think, especially once we get to the standalone races after Michigan, because we got the Nationwide 100, then we got 3 straight standalone events: the TreatMyPC.com 150, the Tinder 125, and then the Disney World 125. I think we're going to learn a lot about who the real deal Craftsman title contenders and the title pretenders are throughout the next month or so. So I certainly cannot wait for it as things begin to heat up in that discipline. Now we switch gears and talk about, I think it's safe to call him one of the biggest ASCA busts of all time, Devin Smith. And Tico Bowden Motorsports has made the decision to not renew his contract for the 2026 campaign. So Smith is out of a ride. And I think Tico Bowden Motorsports is really his last chance in the ASCA. I don't even know what to say about this man. Just Smith has I don't know what went wrong. Like, I'm stuttering because I can't put it into words. I'm genuinely speechless at how quickly things have gone south for him. And you look at the way he was considered in 2020 when it was between him and Shane Park for that Craftsman Series title, those two going head to head. And then they both get elevated to Cup ride, Smith to the 11 for Michael White Racing, Park to the 8 for Stutes Enterprises. And they actually had a pretty solid Rookie of the Year battle. It didn't seem solid, but towards the end, Smith rattled off 5 straight top 5 finishes to close out 2021. You're thinking, man, okay, this kid's finally starting to figure it out. He had a really rough start to his rookie year, but he's finally starting to figure things out. And then he just really didn't do anything his sophomore year. And pretty early into his third year, Michael Racing made a decision to not renew his contract. So Tico Bowden Motorsports to take a flyer on him, give him a 1-year prove-it deal. Smith led some laps in last year's Ajax 200, 36 of them, to be honest with him, which is really solid in TVM equipment, of course. Had a great speed weeks, but really didn't register that good of a result and really didn't do anything the rest of the year and hasn't really done anything since. He got another 1-year prove-it deal for this season and is one of 2 drivers without a top 10 finish in 2025. And I guess Tico Bowden Motorsports decided, man, it's the end of the road. Yeah, at least Bowden, of course, elevates that number 4 car to levels that it shouldn't even be at. So obviously it's understandable that he's going to stick around long term because, of course, he's the owner's son. Jack Alau elevates to number 10 on road courses and plate tracks to levels that it probably shouldn't be at and that most drivers can't really get it to. So it's understandable that they have him under contract for this year and for next year. What does Devin Smith bring to the table? He keeps the car in one piece. Okay. I mean, that's expected when you get to the Cup level. It's really tough to kind of break that down. And at this point, I don't think that he really brings much. Honestly, you expect him to be up there at the short tracks, at least like Nick Painter was, his predecessor. He hasn't done that. Hasn't been up there at the plate tracks other than the Ajax 200. Just what a disaster Devin Smith's ASCA career has been, and it appears that it might be coming to an end unless the Craftsman team wants to take a flyer on him. So we'll keep an eye on that situation. Maybe another team wants to sign his damaged goods, but I don't know. I think it's the end of the road for him in the sport, honestly. And it's a sad story for what was once regarded as one of the most hyped up prospects of all time. So now we move on to the Michigan road course, the final right turns the ASCA were making all year, the second stop on the Michigan swing. It's going to be an emotional weekend for Nick Orchidi, man. This used to be his playground from I'd say about 2015 to 2020-ish, 2015 to 2019, I would say. He had finished no worse than third in those 5 years, and he won 2 races there. Obviously won another one in 2022. That would be his most recent win, denying the now, I would say, road course king Shane Park of his first career win on that weekend that he announced he would be signing for Ronnie Woods Motorsports. So for this to be Orchidi's final Michigan start it's crazy to think about. It really is. And it's a sad situation. Nick has just had a miserable final season thus far. He currently sits, 18th in points. He's at 4 DNFs in 6 races. And I don't think a single one of them has been his fault. It's just been a lot of wrong plays, wrong time. And even in the race that he did finish, he ran super well at the streets Computerville. And then West Virginia in the car, which is awful day. So it's been a rough year for Nico Orchidi. I think that he was a villain back in the day, but I think a lot of people are going to be rooting for him to win this race on Saturday. Really go out at Michigan with a bang. And hopefully he can have a good run at least. We'll see. But I think that's the major storyline on the weekend. Nick Ortiz final race at Michigan, and hopefully he can get one final Cup Series victory. That would be awesome, I would say, for the 2016 champion. But moving on, as for the Craftsman race, Colin Ward is racing this week, filling in for the indefinitely suspended Laquan grandson. He will be in the number 16. And you're going to have him, you have Jack Alaus in the 22, you have Jared Ayers in the 54, and Ryan Dixon in the 60. So it's another stacked lineup of Cup drivers, but as we proved last week, sometimes that really doesn't mean all that much. And proved that at Disney as well the past couple weeks. But obviously, those are chaotic short tracks. This is a road course. Things should be much more straightforward. But Michigan can be rather hit or miss in that regard. We've seen some crapshoots at Michigan too. So you never know, especially with how narrow that track is. We see any big accidents, they could be involved in, who knows. So I would say it's going to be a race probably between Ward and Nixon out front. Give me Colin Ward to win because he seems like he practically owns his place, knows it like the back of his hand, absolutely spanked the field in this race last season as a Craftsman regular. So now you put him as a Cup driver with another year of experience and running the Cup practices and the Craftsman practices. All that extra seat time he's getting, I think Ward easily dominates the Craftsman race. And then for the Cup race, I'm actually going to go with his Cup teammate, Shane Park. And Park is due for a road course win. He really just didn't have it at the Streets Computerville. It's kind of odd to see him struggling that much. Obviously did have a late pit penalty, but even before then, he was only running back half of the top five. And normally you expect to see Shane Park in the top 2 or 3 on a road course, leading normally those races. But with rain in the forecast, we don't know how Cup drivers would perform in changeable conditions, but my bet is probably on Shane Park performing the best. He performs best in the dry. I think he'll perform well in changeable conditions too. So give me Colin Ward and Shane Park sweep the weekend. Gonna be a fun one though for Michigan. I think we're gonna learn a lot about the title protagonists in both series after this weekend of racing. So I'll join you next weekend to cover all the action from Michigan. Like I said, going to be another fun weekend. Can't wait to get back in here and get after it, recap all the action for you. And yeah, this is Charles Fallon signing out. See you in the next one.